Pilots of the future will not be able to get their favorite ball game on this TV monitor. Closed-circuit television for safe aircraft and space vehicle landings. Another example of how NASA and General Electric are planning today for safe landings in the aerospace world of tomorrow.
Pack your bags, and don't forget your toothbrush, because you've got a one-way ticket to Flushing Meadows, New York.
Another plane, geez.
It's hi-ho and back to the World's Fair in this episode of Details. Hello everyone, my name is Brandon Specht, and today we'll be exploring everyone's favorite unconventional carousel at the New York World's Fair. Of course, I'm talking about the big top carousel at the Festival of Gas. Oh, wait. You weren't looking to rotate around 8 elegant horses in order to experience the past, present, and future of the gas industry? Then what were you looking for? Uh-huh. Right. Oh, so you were looking to learn about that carousel.
It might not look like much now, but right here behind me, this is the site of the Carousel of Progress.
Well, while most carousels just go round and round without getting anywhere, in the one we're about to experience, at every turn, we'll be making progress. Progress is the sound of a motor, the hum of a turbine, the heartbeat of a factory, the sound of a symphony. The roar of a rocket. As far back as the 1950s, Walt Disney had been toying around with an attraction highlighting the idea of progress. Originally, it was meant to be the centerpiece of Edison Square, a new land planned for the Disneyland park in between Main Street and Tomorrowland. While Edison Square was never built, the idea stuck around and was revived for the New York World's Fair. The 64-65 World's Fair was dedicated to man's achievement on a shrinking globe in an expanding universe. Many of the attractions offered a glimpse into the future, or at least what the future was predicted to look like in the 1960s. The Carousel of Progress was a bit of a departure from the traditional formula. First off, the Carousel of Progress was the only stage show at the fair to feature 32 animatronic actors.
Well, they're not real people, but they are a talented and interesting cast. We call them audio animatronic figures, and they talk and act like human beings.
Contrary to human performers, these figures in the Carousel of Progress were required to operate non-stop all day without ever taking a break. Guests, on the other hand, got to relax in a circular theater specifically built to rotate audiences around a series of scenes, which depicted a typical American family over a series of decades. First, in the good old days leading up to the turn of the century, we were introduced to the Carousel family just before electricity entered the home. After that, it's off to the roaring 20s when electricity entered the home and brought some incredible advancements, ready to work at the click of a switch. Oh, hey, we blew a fuse. Guess it's time to move past the era of jazz and air cooling.
No privacy at all around this place.
Sorry, Orville. As I was saying, next the audience enters the fabulous 40s. Mother decorates a new rumpus room, and daughter Jane takes advantage of an electrical exercise machine.
Jane, are you going to the dance?
Yes, but I'm not going to the dance with that jerk Wilfred.
I don't blame you one bit.
Besides, I wouldn't be seen in his old jalopy. Makes me bounce and shake like a bowl of jelly.
In the final scene, the audience gets to celebrate Christmas in the 1960s with all the modern conveniences provided by your friends at General Electric. Fairgoers marveled at all the incredible advancements before exiting the theater and entering a time tube on a one-way trip to the gateway to future progress to get a glimpse at the future by General Electric. Guests could learn about fusion on Earth.
General Electric at San Jose, California, manufactured uranium dioxide pellets which provide heat to produce steam in the reactor. One of the world's most reliable power stations, Dresden shows the way to better and more economical generation of electric power.
Or visit Medallion City, an exhibit demonstrating innovations for the home, public, in industry, and space exploration. The Sky Dome Spectacular was particularly impressive. Visitors could discover mankind's historic efforts to harness energy. The Progress Land Pavilion, presented by General Electric, was tremendously popular. Almost everyone who visited the pavilion during the New York World's Fair left entertained and educated. They usually left with a catchy tune stuck in their head as well.
Shining at the end of every day.
It's a great, big, beautiful tomorrow. And tomorrow there will be another plane.
Man has a dream, and that's the start.
He follows his dream in his mind and in his heart.
And when it becomes a reality, it's a dream come true for you and me.
It's a great, big, beautiful tomorrow, shining at the end of every day.
There's a great, big, beautiful tomorrow.
And tomorrow is just a dream away.
That was kind of bad.
I don't know if that last part was actually on key or if it was following the tune, but you get the gist. I think I get it.
Richard and Robert Sherman have produced a number of songs for Disney attractions over the years, but this is perhaps my favorite. To help tell the story, they produced versions of the track inspired by each of the time periods that show up in the Carousel of Progress. The 20s sounded more like ragtime, whilst the 1940s felt a little bit more like swing. During the 1964-65 World's Fair, more than 12 million people experienced the Carousel of Progress. This ensured that the attraction needed to live on after the fair. In fact, it would move to the West Coast and become the anchor of New Tomorrowland, alongside attractions like Adventures Through Inner Space and the updated Flight to the Moon. There were a few changes to the attraction at Disneyland, most notably the addition of an all-new post-show where guests were invited to visit Disney's Progress City. Walt's vision of the future was the precursor to the experimental prototype Community of Tomorrow. Of course, Walt Disney passed away before that vision could become a reality. Sadly, he didn't even live long enough to see the Carousel of Progress open in Disneyland in 1967. General Electric would remain the sponsor during the attraction's 6-year run in California. It would close in 1973 to make way for America Sings with Eagle Sam. Wrong Eagle. Thank you. It was a musical celebrating the US of A and took advantage of the carousel-style ride system. But that wasn't the end of Carousel of Progress. Oh no. The attraction traveled back to the East Coast, this time settling at the Walt Disney World Resort in Florida. There were definitely some noticeable changes when it opened up in 1975. Many of the voice actors changed, including Father. Also, the final scene would now take place in the 1970s, and there was no post-show. Fans of Progress City would now need to board the People Mover in Walt Disney World in order to see the model. By far, the biggest change was the addition of a new song replacing the original. Our Great Big Beautiful Tomorrow was gone in favor of a new composition from the Sherman Brothers titled
Now is the time, now is the best time, here and right now, through joy or strife. There's so much to cheer for, be glad you're here, for it's the best time of your life.
Oh, I really like this song. Aww.
I do like the song a lot, but I think I prefer ours better. It's a Great Big Beautiful Tomorrow, because I feel like it makes more sense with the attraction. because it's like now is the best time, but it's a carousel of progress, being like we progress and get better.
While the song has its following, many longtime fans were deeply offended by the change. Regardless, Now Is the Time would stick around for almost 2 decades. So during that time period, General Electric began talking about a brand new attraction for Disney World's second Florida park, Epcot Center. You see, when Walt Disney passed, his vision of the experimental prototype Community of Tomorrow evolved into something more like a World's Fair, not unlike the one in Flushing Meadows where Carousel of Progress premiered. Disney Imagineers started working with GE on an attraction that would serve as the spiritual successor for Carousel. The attraction was called Horizons, and it opened in 1983.
And what I remember about Horizons is that it wasn't one of the first pavilions opened at Future World. It kind of came a few months later, and the futuristic scenes and kind of showing us where we're going. You had the underwater scene, you had the outer space scene, and you had the farming scene. The desert scene. One of the interesting things about Horizons, I was obviously, like many other people, sad when it was demolished, but I happened to actually be on the highway at the time when they were hauling off the ride vehicles. I saw them on the back of a truck, and I got a few pictures of it being hauled away. So yeah, every time I pass by Mission Space now, I kind of lament the fact that Horizons isn't here anymore. It's kind of sad, really.
Many fans are also quick to point out the resemblance between the Horizons 2 narrators and Mother and Father from the Carousel of Progress. With their new attraction up and running at Walt Disney World's newest park, General Electric felt like it was time to end their 20-year sponsorship of the Carousel of Progress. GE would continue their sponsorship of Horizons well into the 90s. The 90s also brought about some big changes for the Carousel of Progress. Tomorrowland in the Magic Kingdom was going through a major overhaul, transforming into the future that never was. During that time, the carousel would transform into the version that we are familiar with today. Gene Shepard joined the cast and took on the role of the father. Now, if that voice sounded familiar, he was also the narrator of the holiday classic, A Christmas Story.
Immediately, my feet began to sweat as those 2 fluffy little bunnies with the blue button eyes stared sappily up at me.
Fans were excited to find out the original song, It's a Great Big Beautiful Tomorrow, was back. Grandma experiences virtual reality for the first time. Orville still can't find any privacy, and Rover lives to be 100 years old. That's 413 in dog years. The attraction was rebranded Walt Disney's Carousel of Progress, and now it's viewed more as a tribute to its creator. Although our carousel family has experienced a few changes over the years, the core of the show still revolves around the same theme, and that's progress.
Fun fact, when I was younger, instead of going to Disney and like dressing like Disney princesses, I went to Disney and I dressed like the grandma on the Carousel of Progress. I even had the VR glasses.
Now we want to hear from you. Which version of the carousel have you experienced? And what's your favorite version of the song? And how many of you remember Horizons? Tell us about it in the comments section below. Also, before we go, we should give a huge thank you to all of our friends who appeared in these videos, helping us out to showcase the 1964 and 65 New York's World Fair. If you'd like to find out more about any of these incredible individuals, make sure to check out the description of this video. And if you missed any of our previous videos highlighting the 1964-65 New York's World's Fair, take a moment and check them out. And as always, make sure you subscribe to Retro Spectrum so you don't miss a single episode of Details. Let the century begin.